Hello and welcome back to my channel. It occurred to me yesterday, it just kind of came to me like this magical idea that I talk about a lot of stuff on my channel that I'm either still learning about or, I'm growing into and that sort of thing. But I don't really talk about anything on my channel that I actually consider myself an expert in other than being a girl with a disability. And I think it was a Raw Beauty Christie video that I was watching the other day when she was taking us through her beauty room in her fancy redone house. And she was talking about how she doesn't know anything about cameras and lighting and that sort of thing, and how she just kind of looks it up and asks her friends and that sort of thing. And I was like, well, I kind of went to school for that, didn't I? Yeah, would start mowing the lawn right now. For those of you who don't know, I do work in talk radio. I'm a producer, though. I'm not on air, so I just do a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff. But the program that I did actually was broadcasting as a whole. So we learned about television production, film production, and, of course, radio production, which is what I ended up working in. So realistically, this sort of YouTube setup is perfect for the kind of skills that I learned and a good way for me to continue with those skills. So I thought in this video today, I would kind of take you through some of the basics of what I learned in school and how I would like to, or how I could apply them on YouTube. I definitely don't use all of them, but these are some of the things. So first and foremost, basic setup. You only have so much visual space in a video to tell a story. So tell a story with the whole frame. I'm so sorry, but I absolutely hate plain backgrounds. I know that I've used a pink one sort of recently, simply because I was setting up all my Halloween videos and I had to use a backdrop for that. So it was just easier to swap out the backdrop for a pink one rather than take the whole bar down and do all that all the time. But unless you're doing really intense makeup and all the focus is supposed to be on your face, tell a story with the whole background. This room tells you a story of me. You can see the Oregon High School Host Club bunny here, my wheelchair parking sign. There's a candle up there and a Sailor Moon glowy. You can see all my Sailor Moon figures over here. It says Girl Boss, although it fell right when I started shooting. Awesome. There's some tea and some masks over here. And not only that, but something that I personally don't like on new YouTube, if you will, as compared to old YouTube, is this sort of set feel. A lot of YouTubers, even if the person might come off as relatable, they're sitting in this absolutely crisp, white, clean room with these beautiful lights and these beautiful plants, and everything looks completely pristine, untouched, and not lived in. And that's beautiful, but it looks like a set. It doesn't look like you live there, and to me that belongs on TV, like actual TV, and not on YouTube. That's kind of why in this sort of recent destruction of the YouTuber community, whenever someone has had to make an apology video, they're clearly doing it in their living room with just a camera, and they're wearing whatever, because it's supposed to make them seem more humble, more genuine. It's a very calculated approach. Don't fall for it. Rather than in their beautifully set up beauty room where they probably had a decorator and all this stuff in there. So that is a little bit of a personal opinion thing. If you like a background and you like just the plain sheet background, totally go for it. You do you. But something about it always comes off as very disingenuous to me. Now you're selling a product, or now you're in a commercial. Even if it's just your YouTube channel, it looks too professional to me for YouTube. And I actually think that that's a big reason why lately I love Gabby Hanna's channel. She used to be The Gabby Show, and that's because she's very clearly shooting in her living room. Her whole wall in the background is her fan art. She's got her shopping cart of random stuff, her couch. It looks very homey, and it looks very real and very her, and it makes it more relatable. Now, when it comes to a camera, I'm going to be totally honest with you, you don't need to go out and buy a fancy, nice camera. Because most phones and most cameras available on the market in this day and age shoot in high enough quality. You're going to be okay. You also really don't need 4K. I know a lot of people are like, 4K is the next big thing, blah, 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 but it's not coming fast enough to warrant you going out and buying a $3,000 camera. It's just not necessary. Honestly, if you have an iPhone, it's probably got a good enough quality camera. I'm not an iPhone, I'm a Samsung, so my camera quality on my phone is awful, but still. However, if you are going to get a camera, I definitely recommend getting an actual DSLR with a removable lens rather than a point-and-shoot camera. Let me tell you why. This is my digital camera, my vlog camera. I keep a little tripod in this bag, and this is the camera. So this is one of the Nikon Coolpix cameras. It's the A900, that's what it's called. And it actually can shoot in 4K, but I never do because it eats up so much of the memory card. I picked this camera specifically because the viewfinder folds up, and because it's got a super duper zoom to it. Now, because this camera does shoot in such high quality, I am always tempted to use it for videos instead of my DSLR, but I don't, because I like that on a DSLR I can actually manipulate settings and save them, and it's just in general much easier, much more user-friendly to get the image that you want out of a DSLR. Whereas like point and shoot cameras like this sometimes I find have a mind of their own. I've seen a lot of YouTubers especially talk about how they were shooting on like little cameras like this and it came with a face filter and they couldn't figure out how to get it off. Whereas a DSLR, you're not going to have that because they have so many settings in them. You'll also notice that this is a Nikon. My DSLR is also a Nikon. We'll get into that in a second. I'm generally more of a Nikon girl than a Canon girl, but that's just personal preference. Now, DSLR stands for Digital Single Lens Reflex Camera, if I remember correctly. That doesn't really matter, it's just a fun little tidbit. So the camera that I have is actually the Nikon D5200. It's a little bit of an older model. In total, it cost me about $400. Like, it was not that expensive. That's a lot of money, don't get me wrong, but digital cameras are much more expensive than that. I like this camera because it is just extremely user-friendly. It's really easy to play with the settings, all of that, and also the viewfinder, just like on my smaller camera, flips out. So you see a lot of big YouTubers, they're shooting and they have like a big monitor here beside the camera. You don't need that if the viewfinder flips out, you know? For most YouTubing purposes, the lens that comes with the camera is really all you need. You don't have to go out and buy a big fancy lens. You just don't. You've seen some of my foundation and concealer reviews. We're pretty able to get close up and show you my skin and show you the powder and all of that with... Does he have to mow the lawn right now? It's pretty good at getting in close and showing you whatever you need to see. A trick with a standard camera lens like that, though, rather than going in and getting specialty camera lenses, is to get this sort of look where I'm really in focus, but the background is slightly out of focus. Set the camera really far away, zoom in far, and then focus it. So I actually keep this stick right beside where I'm shooting over here so that I can hit record, back up all the way, and then hit the refocus button so that it'll focus on me from this far away because I can't reach. And that's how you play with the depth of field and get that you in focus, background out of focus. So you really don't have to buy an expensive lens. I did recently buy a second lens. This is a macro lens, which means it shows you like really intense, a lot of detail. Now the reason I bought this lens is for when I shoot close-ups of products for you so that you can really see. Like I was finding this lens, I was having a hard time getting like the texture in an eyeshadow. Like, I could get it, but it was just difficult, and I wanted it to be easier, so I bought this lens from Henry's, and I really like it so far, but I haven't had it very long yet. The two most important settings within a camera that you need to learn and you need to know and understand. First is white balance. White balance teaches your camera how to read colors. Now, a lot of cameras do come with decent preset white balances, but honestly, to get a perfect picture, you're probably going to want to set your white balance yourself. So what you're going to want to do is set up all your lights or whatever, sit in front of the window, whatever your lighting setup is going to be. We're going to talk about that later. But get everything set up, zoom the lens in onto something that is pure white. Usually I use a piece of printer paper. Zoom it in all the way, hit the white balance button. Your camera will then focus on just the white and find the white shade within the camera lens. And from there, it will be able to judge, okay, if this is white, then that's red, and that's blue, and that's purple, and that's orange, and that's green. And that's how your camera will be able to read color. And the issue is that that's going to change depending on different lighting scenarios. So for YouTube, for the most part, you're probably just sitting in one spot, so it's okay. I'm a terrible YouTuber, so I always have the blinds open over here. So as the sun goes behind clouds, that's when my color starts to change. Like if you notice, sometimes I'm a little bit orangier, and then I fade into like a bluer. That's the sun going behind a cloud. If I was smart, I would think to black out the window before I start, but I never think to do that, do I? So that's setting your white balance. The next most important thing, IMO, is exposure/ISO. This is just like a personal pet peeve, but I really hate videos that are overexposed. Overexposed means that the highlights on someone's face are bright white. If you're vlogging and you're inside and then you transition to outside, everything goes white for a second, right? That's it overexposing. So you can actually manipulate your settings on your camera to let in less light or let in more light depending on the ISO. So if I'm in here and it's really dark, I can pump up the ISO to let in as much light as possible so that the camera kind of brightens it for me. Or if I'm outside and it's a really bright sunny day, I can turn down the ISO, close that aperture, and let in less light so that I don't look completely washed out and bright white. So keep that in mind if you are going to be either investing in or using like a higher quality camera. Two things that I think go underappreciated in the world of cameras are white balance and exposure. Make sure you keep those in check. Personally, I know a lot of people prefer videos that are overexposed. I don't really know why. I actually prefer videos that are underexposed. Like, obviously, you want to hit that perfect exposure if you can, but if I had to choose, I prefer underexposed because, A, I just hate bright videos. Like, I had to turn down the brightness on my computer because it's just, like, blinding. But also, I find that if it's a little bit darker, I can almost see detail better because it's not just completely washed out. That's why you'll notice if I ever have to choose, I will choose underexposed because I just like it better. Next, we're going to talk about audio. Something I actually really know about. If you take nothing else from this video, I want you to understand dual redundancy, and that is recording your audio into two sources at the same time, because audio has a history of crapping out on you, and if your audio craps out, it sucks, because you might have perfect video, but you can't hear anything. Some DSLRs come with a built-in microphone. Mine, fortunately, does. So in dire scenarios, I will use the built-in microphone on the camera as my backup audio source. It's really not great quality. It picks up a lot of noise from the room. So like that guy mowing the lawn outside now that I keep complaining about, it'll pick up a lot of that lawnmower sound. So I would prefer to not use that. But I will if I have to. But I always have a more primary source of audio. So what I used to use. So these used to be my two main sources of audio. This is a lavalier microphone. These little ones that like pin onto your shirt. I used to use this, and the end of it actually plugs directly into the side of my camera. It's just like, sort of looks like a headphone jack. It plugs in. And then my camera would automatically reroute itself so that it was recording audio from this rather than from the built-in microphone. So I would do that, and then secondarily, I would have this microphone set up on my desk. This is my blue snowball microphone. I named it Olaf. And it would be plugged into my computer, recording into Adobe Audition, which is an audio editing software that I actually do pay for. It's expensive, and I do pay for it. So these used to be my two primary audio recording sources. Now, these were not the best, simply because my MacBook, which I was recording audio into, is old and dying. So sometimes it would only record the first 8 seconds of audio, and then it would crap out. It still does that sometimes. And then this was a really cheap lavalier microphone, so it's not ideal. So I actually recently upgraded to an H4n Zoom recorder, I believe is my specific model. It's an older model, so it was inexpensive, but I really like it. And it has yet to crap out on me while I'm recording, so I record my audio while I'm shooting just slightly beside the camera, and then I just use the camera backup as my backup audio. Cross my fingers, I haven't had to use that yet. Now though, you might be thinking, Abby, if you're recording into things that aren't attached to the camera, how do you get the video and then the audio synced? Well, you've probably seen one of these before, haven't you? It's a really underwhelming sound. Basically, what a clapper exists for, because believe it or not, on actual sets, they do record the audio and the video separately as well. This clappy sound creates a peak in the audio waveform, both in the camera's audio waveform and in the external audio recording device's audio. So in your editing, you're able to line up those peaks, and then you have synced audio and video. So then after that, you would just mute the camera's audio or delete it or whatever. And as long as you don't move the other audio around, they'll be perfectly synced. I don't actually use this ever. I just have it. Usually I just clap a couple of times, and that's how I do it. One last tip when it comes to audio. Something that bothers me a lot is when people leave their music too high. Honestly, I don't think music is necessary all the time, and it's probably not necessary as often as you think it is. I do think that if you're talking the whole time in a video, music is often not necessary. I know that I've used it sometimes, so that makes me a little bit of a hypocrite. But you don't need music as often as you think you need it. But if you're going to use music, leave it low. And if you're contemplating, is it too loud or is it just right, blah, 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 go lower. Always go lower. Think of our dear hard of hearing friends. Can they hear you over this music? Because sometimes I can't even hear you over this music. It breaks my heart when I'm watching someone who I think has probably great content, but I can't hear them over their copyright-free audio library music. And even some big YouTubers do that sometimes too. I'm watching their video, even with headphones, and I'm like, I can't hear you over your music. Great. So if the question is ever, is my music too loud? The answer is yes. Now, last thing I want to talk about in this video is lighting. On TV sets, one of the reasons it takes so long to shoot is because they readjust the lighting for every shot they take. Because lighting breaks down into 3 components. There's a key light, a fill light, and a backlight. Your key light, think of that as like a hard directional light, a spotlight, if you will. That is going to be your focus and most of your illumination on the subject. And then your fill light, which is over here, pretty much like creating a Y shape, is a softer, more diffused light, also known as a floodlight. And the point of the fill light is just to kind of douse everything in this beautiful light layer of light so that there are no harsh shadows created by the key light. Now the backlight has two purposes. Purpose number one is to illuminate the background. Purpose number two is to separate the subject from the background. That's how you can tell someone like Mikey from Glam and Gore went to film school, because she has two lights, one facing forward and one facing back. So she has an illuminated background, but she also has this beautiful little like ray of light over her shoulders, and it just shines nicely through her hair. It's the most beautiful backlight, and honestly that would be ideal if I was not in a wheelchair sitting directly against a big black thing. I would love to do a backlight properly, but I haven't figured out the logistics yet. For lighting, for me, ideally what I would like to do someday is have a ring light and a softbox, have my camera set up in the middle, and then have some kind of backlight situation. For right now, all I have is my ring light, and then I have these. These are what I used to use only for lighting. These are literally, I have two of these little LED boxes that I just sit on the back of my chair and use as backlights so that you can see some of the background. It's not just completely dark, because the ring light is more of a hard light, so it's just going to illuminate me and not illuminate the background at all. I bought these for $20 on Amazon, honestly. What I used to do before I had the ring light was I used one of these and had no filter on it or anything, and had it pretty close to my face to create a harsher light. And then I had a second one set farther back with this over it to kind of diffuse and soften the light, so it acted more of a floodlight. It wasn't ideal because these little boxes aren't very powerful. It was the best I had. However, lighting equipment can be expensive, and honestly, you don't need it because we all have access to the best lighting equipment there is. The sun. We look at a channel like ShanXO. ShanXO is an absolutely beautiful and talented YouTuber who's been around for a long time. Her videos look perfect, and all she uses is the sun. If you can get the right kind of window with the right kind of setup, you're golden. You don't need any of this. I can't do it because my window is small and up there and I have blinds, and it's a whole thing. But if you can just set up in front of a window and then adjust your exposure so that you're not totally whited out, you're golden. Anyway, I think that's all I have for this video. I hope you found it informative or helpful in some way. I did my best. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and you subscribe to my channel if you have not subscribed already, and I will see you next time. Bye!